All right, hello everyone. We're presenting chapter 15 or part of chapter 15 on media ethics, which covers pages or is covered by pages 372 to 379. I'm Reese. Oh, and I already hit my laptop. All right. So, vulgarity in media. The first section of this chapter talks about some of the vulgarity in politics, and that is covered by the news and media, which includes the examples they use in the textbook were instances where presidents in the past had used vulgar language or were caught using vulgar language in a casual setting. And media platforms took a lot of different routes to cover that. Some of them chose to include the vulgarity and include the word in their coverage and in the article, and other platforms chose to bleep it out, write expletive, write something else. So covers sort of an ethical dilemma in media and how to cover that. One of the examples that they used was from former President Trump, referred to Haiti and some other African countries as uh, shithole countries. And so they were talking about, the textbook was talking about how certain media platforms were actually using the word when they covered it. Some media platforms were only using it once every hour as they were talking about it, and some platforms chose to not use it at all. So it establishes how each media platform has their own set of rules and regulations for themselves, their own personal code of conduct that would allow them to either include or not include the vulgarity that they're covering. So, on that subject, the textbook then moves in to talk about the difference between morality and ethics, because it mentions that a lot of people use those two terms interchangeably when they do not mean the same thing. So, morality is like your personal code of conduct. So, your own personal set of rules that governs your own actions. So, right here in this Venn diagram, it says personal principles and that they rarely change. Your morals don't usually change on a day-to-day basis or based on a certain situation. Your morals are kind of like think of the 10 commandments as set in stone. So uh then ethics is very different because it's a more logical set of rules that are supposed to kind of be an all-encompassing set of rules that apply to or not any situation, but apply to society, can be applied to any situation and govern society's actions. So, like I just said, uh, it's based more on logic and reasoning, and a lot of times there will be conflicts between morals and ethics because something could go against someone's personal morals, but it could be the ethically right thing to do in general. So that's how that works. And that's shown in this example from an article I sourced from the Vet Times in 2024, which covers a heavy subject, but one that often forces people to reconsider their moral stance on certain things. And it's the subject of euthanasia. So this article talked about how a certain veterinarian clinic or veterinarians, uh, you know, no one wants to kill animals. No one wants to kill people. This applies to people as well as animals. No one wants to do that. But sometimes you have to, like when a dog or a person is really sick and you need to, like their quality of life is poor and they're suffering and they need to be put down. Sometimes that's what needs to happen. So it could go against someone's morals to kill a dog or to kill a person, but it might be the ethical thing to do in that scenario. And so that's an issue that really highlights the difference between morality and ethics. And so the first quiz question: which philosopher described achieving happiness as finding a just right point between excess and defect, otherwise known as the golden mean? And the options are Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and John Locke. All right. And passing it on to Joe.
Hey, I'm Joe, and I'm continuing on the chapter 15 media ethics for our pages, and I was looking over the categorical imperative, which is basically Immanuel Kant's theory, which holds that you should only behave in a way that would lead to the creation of the universal rules and its necessities, considering people as ends in end of themselves, not only as means to an end, and it places an emphasis on behaving out of moral obligation rather than selfish goals or consequences. And Kant really didn't worry about the consequences of an action, more just he observed the act itself and basically just trying not to start that act because the consequences won't happen if you don't act on a certain thing um that could be ethically wrong. Um if you could hit the next slide, Reese. And basically I chose ethics and politics. Our last presidential debate was definitely odd. The first kind of one we've seen like that ever. A lot of shots were taken that were really unethical, and that was really the thing that was focused on more than anything by the general public. Was they were more just entertained on who could roast who better. And politics, I feel we're obviously covered, but in a more attacking way. And I feel that ethically the media could handle it better because people just want to see who people just want to be proven right and want to prove others wrong. And I feel that it's just it sucks to see that, especially in our age generation, being the next ones to really shape our country. But yeah, uh, next slide. And then my quiz question, blank is the rational way to decide what is good for individuals or society. And that is either A, morals, B, ethics, C, golden mean, or D, fairness. And I will pass it on to Pierce.
What's up, guys? I'm Pierce. This part of the section talks about different philosophers and what ideas they brought to the table. Just continuing on what Joe said, like about Kant, he talks about how you cannot use people to get your goals done. He also says that people need to willingly accept the consequences of the truth coming out, which is really important when you're talking about this sort of stuff. Next is John Stuart Mill's principle of utility is known as the greatest happiness principle. Mill argues throughout the textbook that principle of utility should guide moral decisions and actions. You can hit the next slide. Another person that is talked about in this section is John Rawls. His view of ignorance is used to eliminate bias. It's really important to think about that. Next is Hutchins Commission Social Responsibility Ethics. Tells us that the press has an obligation to provide accurate, comprehensive, and balanced information to inform the public. And then lastly, the textbook about this part was about the importance of the truth and how important it is to know it is true before reporting, because you do not want to report something early and it end up not being true. And then my quiz question is about the view of ignorance requires individuals to do when making ethical decisions. A, consider the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. B, make decisions without knowing their social status or personal interests. C, prioritize economic efficiency over individual rights. And D, focus on the short-term consequences of their actions. And these are our sources.